is actually Fibroid Awareness Month. So I don't know if y'all know that, but it is Fibroid Awareness Month. And to be honest, I didn't plan none of this. It just so happened that the conference landed in this month. And so I remember hearing when he came on, I said, oh, you know, let's see what he's talking about. I didn't know anything about fibroids and how it impacts. I just know I got one. That's what I do know. And so when he started sharing and educating, I just thought, we need to make sure that people hear about this. So tell us, why are you so passionate? I at least want to ask, why are you so passionate about this?
Well, I am, because it's such a important story. If you've seen any of the stuff on our site, Atlantafibroidcenter, you've seen women that literally are transformed. They are suffering horribly. In fact, there are over 1 million women right now in the United States that are suffering with fibroids, and all they know about is surgery, particularly hysterectomy. And they don't want it, so they just kind of live with it. And living with it for a lot of these women, it's not living, it's misery. And so they pad themselves up as much as they can and kind of plow through it. And it's just no way to live. In fact, depending on how deep you want to get in the discussion, I wrote a blog recently about the mental aspects of women going through fibroid stuff. Because we talk about the physical, the anemia, the weakness, the tired, fatigue, losing all that blood every month catches up with you, and you become really weak and tired. But no one really talks about the mental aspects of it.
That's right.
The knowing every month, I'm about to go through this again, and I don't want to do this, but I don't have any other choice. I don't know of any other choice.
Yes.
And you might be the only woman in the workplace. We talked earlier today about women and the C-suite and all that. If you work with a lot of men, they're not too understanding about fibroids and periods. And you don't want to not show up for work, so you just plow through it, whether you have to do it economically, you can't miss work, or you have an obligation where not only, since you're the only woman, or maybe you're the only woman of color, you're not only thinking of yourself, you're thinking of the next hire. If I bail out on women or women of color, they're not going to hire that person next go around because of me. Imagine that burden, that kind of mental aspect. And so the procedure we do is so simple. This procedure is called UFE, uterinefibroid. It's outpatient. It's non-surgical. It takes me about 30 minutes to perform. Patients go home with a Band-Aid. That's it, a Band-Aid and their uterus. And it takes care of all the fibroids, no matter how big, how many, all the symptoms go away. And so it's such an easy thing, but yet nobody knows about it, relatively speaking, because the gynecologists, they're the gatekeepers of women's health, and they don't want you to know about it. They're surgeons. And I've never met a surgeon that didn't love to operate. And no matter, women are entitled to know all their options. They're entitled to know that. And gynecologists are entitled to tell them, but many studies have shown that they don't. Some do, but most do not. And so we're very passionate about getting the word out. Information is power. And so knowing that you have options is really important, because UFE is one of the biggest medical breakthroughs for women, particularly women of color who disproportionately suffer with these benign tumors. And again, we're talking benign. Like if you're talking cancer, hysterectomy is appropriate, period, end. But fibroids are benign tumors. Why in the world are we, I'm getting kind of ahead of tomorrow, but the average age of hysterectomy in this country is less than 40. So why are we essentially amputating young, primarily black women for benign disease? And you can go real deep on that, particularly I'm in Atlanta, where there's a history of operating on women, Mississippi appendectomies, the Fannie Lou Hamers. We have a long history that's not so elegant about how we treat women. And so we need to correct that. We need to fix it, because we can do things much better to serve women. and they're entitled to know about UFE, and hopefully conferences like this and others will get that word out, and everyone at least have the choice.
We want you to safely come around.
Okay, all right.
All right. Yes. Thank you for joining the conversation. And so we both have our doctors here that have shared some information about fibroids and how people can approach it. And so, as you know, because I believe this is one of your platforms.
It is.
Yes. So I want you to share with us. So first of all, why did you make this your platform? Why did you make this one of your platforms?
Hey ladies, nice to see everyone this evening. You guys know me, I'm Cynthia, and fibroids is definitely a platform of mine, and it is because I suffered from fibroids for years. And it got to the point where, I think you were talking about quality of life. Okay, well you don't get to really have a real quality of life if you suffer with fibroids. And everything from the smallest thing that I would have to do, work-wise, personal-wise, everything just took so much energy and strength. I was anemic, I was everything. My OBGYN never really mentioned any real options when it came to fibroids. Once I figured out what it was, hysterectomy came up. And I was like, well, that seems a little extreme. And I did my own research, started just reading everything I could about fibroids. And I actually, the first thing that popped up was this gentleman right here, Dr. Lipman's name. And he was, when I was reading everything, I was like, okay, and it just happened, he happened to be in Atlanta. I was like, okay, so this is the guy that I'm gonna reach out to. We connected, we made magic together. I am fibroid free. I'm actually 55 years old now, pre-menopause. So at this point, they would be going away now anyway. But it was life-changing. It was really honestly life-changing for me to get that procedure done. And probably after, even like a couple of months after, we did the UFE procedure, uterinefibroid, which I was a candidate for. I think my biggest fibroid was like a size of an orange. I think I maybe had like 2 or 3. Super invasive, like I literally laid down and woke up. I didn't even know. I was like, when are we starting? It was like, it's over. I was like, oh, okay. I just don't even remember that much of it, but I just remember it being super easy. And when I look back now, and I meet so many people, well, let me go back again. So then the other thing that I did, which I'm really proud of, is I convinced my producers to film it for the Real Housewives of Atlanta. And the reason why I did that is because fibroids affect mostly black and brown people, women. And pretty much most of our cast, except one person, has suffered with fibroids. They don't talk about it publicly, it is what it is, but I decided that I wanted to talk about it because it was, as a reality star, I always tried to show my real life, and it was something that always made everything so difficult to me. It affected me spiritually, emotionally, sexually. I was anemic. I, stayed on the baby bump list. Everybody always thought I was pregnant. I was always getting congratulations for being pregnant. Everyone does have a baby because my stomach was always bloated. And like as a TV personality, it's like, okay, I'm not pregnant, I have fibroids already. Like stop. It was like embarrassing after a while. And then, I would have, I was like bleeding all over the place all the time. My periods I was either getting on or getting off all the time. Couldn't wear white, sheets a mess all the time, just never wiped nothing. So making the choice to do something about it was the best choice I've ever made. And I'm so glad that we filmed it, because with everything that I've done on that show, on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, anywhere I go in the world, women come up to me and say, thank you for talking about fibroids on TV. there's a certain amount of shame and embarrassment that comes with fibroids. Even like a lot of women say, I didn't want to talk to my husband about it. And what happened was it just ended up making women feel comfortable just having the conversation and trying to figure out how to, get their life back. And it also gave their husband an understanding of what they were going through as well. Because fibroids just doesn't affect the person who has fibroids, it affects everyone around. You just don't, you're just tired all the time. You don't want to bother with anyone. So I'm so glad that I did that. We also got an opportunity to go on the doctor's show as well together, Dr. Lipman and I, to talk about it some more. And it honestly is the best thing, I think, one of the best things I've done on the Real Housewives of Atlanta is to share that with the world. And now more celebrities are talking about it more because now it's like, before it wasn't cool or sexy to talk about fibroids. But now women and, other women on television are really opening up about it. So I'm really happy about that because I think the conversation has to keep going, and although I no longer suffer with fibroids, I still use my platform to talk about it because I still want other women to, be aware that they have choices and options. My mother had a hysterectomy because she didn't, know any better. That's what she was told, and that's what she did, and she's had a laundry list of problems ever since. I am so passionate about keeping this conversation going because, again, I just saw a woman the other day who just had a hysterectomy. And I was like, every time I hear it, it just breaks my heart because I'm like, dang, I wish we could have gotten to her before to get her the information. And then we won't even get into the infertility. If you're trying to have a baby, that's a whole another set of issues with, when it comes to fibroids. Lucky for me, I was one and done, so that wasn't our problem. I was like, let's get these fibroids out. I'm not trying to have any more kids. So, but I know a lot of women, younger women are, so, and that's, it's just crazy. It's just an epidemic that we have to figure out how we can stop, allowing women to suffer in silence and not, take their life back. So.
Lipman, I said, I don't even know how I stumbled upon you. I just know we connected last year, and then I started learning how many women are losing their uterus and they don't have to. They don't have to. And can you talk about how was this procedure? Did it take long or anything like that? I'd definitely like you to come in and then Dr. Lipman to comment on it.
It was, I don't know, maybe a couple hours. I don't remember much. I just know they went in through this area here. It's a very small incision. I don't have a scar or a mark there. I felt like I'll, pass it over to Dr. Lipman. He can give you guys more details, but I just remember it being like, oh, it's over? Okay. And then I maybe stayed there an hour and then I went home. And I think, when I went home, I rested, they prescribed me some pain medicine if I needed it. I can't remember if I needed it. Maybe I took it the first day. And the second day after I had UFE done, I was filming a scene for Housewives talking about me having it done. Yeah, immediately came over and I was in the bed and we did the scene, and the recovery was easy. It really, really honestly was. I mean, I can't imagine, what it's like to go through a hysterectomy, which should always be the absolute last resort, in my opinion, but I'm not a doctor, so I'm gonna pass this microphone over to somebody that is one.
The procedure is that easy. It takes me 30 minutes to perform. The approach is at the top of the right leg. Some people go into the left wrist. And basically you're putting a catheter into the blood supply. There's a uterine artery on each side of the uterus, and it branches like a tree, getting smaller and smaller branches till you get out to the leaves. The fibroids are the leaves of the tree. And we can block the blood flow to every fibroid in the uterus, whether you have 1 or 100, doesn't matter how big, how many. And without a blood supply, these fibroids are going to die. Oftentimes you can feel them. And they enlarge a woman's uterus, making her look a certain pregnancy, Cynthia mentioned paparazzis thought she was pregnant. It was her uterus being enlarged by these rock-like fibroids. And so these rock-like fibroids after embolization are converted into smaller, softer bags of water. They can't exert that force anymore to cause symptoms, whether it's heavy periods, pelvic pain, urinary frequency. Wherever these fibroids reside, they're going to be dead. And so most women that have fibroids have no symptoms. They don't need a UFE, they don't need to see me. We call those fibroids passenger fibroids. They just ride along in the uterus and a woman passes away with them. But there are a segment of women that have very significant symptoms. And after UFE, those symptoms go away. And it's a simple procedure done as an outpatient. They come into our center, we're at the atlantafibroidcenter, it's a 30-minute procedure. They go home in a couple hours, 2-3 hours, with a Band-Aid. That's it, a Band-Aid. No, if you have hysterectomy, a lot of times the hysterectomy is done either, they talk about robotic surgery and laparoscopic surgery. These uteruses are typically too big and they're occupy so much of the pelvis, they can't be done robotically or laparoscopically, which is still surgery, less invasive surgery, but typically most hysterectomies for fibroids are done open surgery, which means the hospitalization, general anesthesia, and either a horizontal incision, hip to hip, or if it's above the belly button, they start at the breastbone and vertically cut the woman all the way down to the pubic hairline. And sometimes the unfortunate, they start out horizontal and they can't get it enough, then they can cut them vertically. So they get the nice upside down T. All of that open surgery is unnecessary. You don't need any surgery. You can get a Band-Aid, but you have to know about it. And that's the thing, we want to educate people that they don't have, no matter what your gynecologist says, that's probably the most important point. No matter what your gynecologist says, you do not need to have a hysterectomy for fibroids, period, end. You can do it, it's an option, but it should be the option of last resort because UFE is so easy and so good and so successful. Yeah, it moves slowly, but what I can say for patients, and I tell patients, when you go to the doctor, go with questions. Nobody knows your body better than you. Be your own health advocate. No matter what it is, we're talking about fibroids today, whether it's fibroids, high blood pressure, diabetes, be your own advocate. Bring a pad and have questions, arm yourself with information, ask the doctor questions. There's so many women that they feel that they're not being listened to. If you go to the doctor and the doctor is not listening to you and dismisses you, find another doctor. There are plenty of good doctors out there. So go with questions, go with another person, just so you have someone else and be your own advocate. If you're not getting the answers, go somewhere else. A lot of times, patients will bleed very heavily for a long time and think it's normal. It's not normal. And so you've got to know you know your body and know something's wrong. Even if your doctor says, we did blood tests, your hemoglobin's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean you're okay, particularly when you're bleeding so heavily. If you're bleeding such that it interferes with your quality of life, I don't care what your hemoglobin level is. That ain't normal. And I can show you normal. UFE can return the number one reason why women have heavy periods is fibroids. And so if the fibroids are the culprit, there is a very simple solution to get you the quality of life back that you deserve.
Plays a part in keeping that awareness out there. For me, for someone who has a bigger platform on television, again, I don't have fibroids anymore, but I still choose to talk about fibroids because it is a part of my story. To just continue to make it just normal conversation, like everybody, even the men in our lives should know what a fibroid is at this point, because if you don't have it, your mom had it, your grandmother had them, my aunt has them, and it's not even so much of an age thing, younger women are getting them as well. So I feel like you know, at this point in 2022, everyone should have, you know, should know what fibroids are. And it wasn't that long ago, I didn't actually know what a fibroid was until I was actually pregnant with my daughter Noelle. And that was the first time I even heard of fibroid. You know, she was like, you know, doing ultrasound and making sure the baby's okay. She's like, oh, you have a fibroid. And I was like, okay, you know, when your first baby, like, what's that? You know, what's wrong? She's like, oh, it's just a little tumor or whatever. And then you hear that and you're like, oh my God, I'm dying. What, you know, she was so like, oh, no, it's nothing. It's like that's the size of a grape, and you know, you'll be fine. You know, baby's fine. It was just like no big deal. So I was like, okay. Looking back, what I would have appreciated in that moment was, hey, you know, the baby's fine, but this is something you may want to check on because fibroids grow, and as they get bigger, they do become issues, and I just thought it was just so crazy that she just made it just seem like it was just nothing. Like, you know, no big deal. And then I was met with that same just nonchalant attitude when I would go to my OBGYN and talk about, you know, my period's so heavy and it's painful and it's this and I'm anemic and this, I'm tired. We were like, oh, well, that's, you know, you'll be fine. And I don't know if there's like a certain expectation when it comes to Black women, because this mostly affects us, that we're just supposed to just ride it out, that we are just stronger and tougher than non-Black women, I guess. You know what I mean? It's like, that is, yeah, that's crazy. It's really crazy. Especially when, you know, we want quality of life as well. We don't want to sit and have a period for 10 days, 15 days, if there is an answer to our problem. And before I had my UFE procedure, my cycle would be 8 to 10 days before it was done. And the first 2 days, I could barely do anything, to be honest. And so, I mean, out of the month, I mean, I maybe had 1 week where I actually felt pretty decent. And even then it was like just okay. But it definitely, you know, just affected everyone around me. So I think the doctors, I mean, I hope it's changed. I mean, I had mine done some years ago. I'm really hoping that now when, you know, you go to the doctor, they'll give you more information, because I definitely feel like more people are talking about fibroids, but we can talk about it more. And I think, like I pointed out before, it's the reason why I do stay in it as well is because I really want other celebrities to see me doing it and decide to talk about theirs, because I know a lot of celebrities, and guess what, they have fibroids too. They just don't talk about it. But the more we just keep the conversation going, the more comfortable I guess they'll, you know, be to eventually talk about it. But we should all talk about it. If any woman has fibroids, they should talk about it. They should talk to a neighbor about it. You know, hey, how do you feel? Do you have fibroids? You know, you have this option or whatever. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing like, it's almost like a little dirty secret. Like, it's like, oh, you know, you gotta just quietly sit and suffer with this. And, you know, even, I don't know if you guys spoke on this or not, but just the whole mental wellness of it all. Like, I don't, you know, throw the word depression around, but I definitely felt like I was in a very dark headspace when I was dealing with, when my fibroids were at its worst. And even when I look back on, when I watched some of the old episodes of The Real Housewives of Atlanta, when I was definitely dealing with fibroids, it was like I just didn't even have like a light in my eyes. Like I was just going through the motions, and all I did was chew ice all the time. Sonic has good ice. BP in Atlanta got amazing ice. Hospitals, amazing ice. They got the like soft crushed ice. I was like an iceologist. I would have all these weird cravings. Like at one point, every time I say this, everyone's mortified. Like at one point, I would even sometimes crave dirt. Like I just had crazy cravings, and it was just like, it almost felt like you just had like a little alien living inside of you, just making you want all kinds of, it was like you're not, just draining the life out of you. Like, you're not ever gonna feel good, I'm gonna make you crave all this stuff. Like, I would literally make my husband get up at like 2 in the morning and go get me some crushed ice. That's crazy. Crazy. Specifically, one time, this was kind of the breaking point for me, and I've talked about this before publicly. I remember being out of town at an event for Bravo, and it was like some kind of meet and greet, and I was on the cycle, and I think we're sitting there for like a couple hours, and you know, with me having fibroids, of course, I would have to get up and change every 45 minutes almost. And of course I had on extra super tampon, extra super pad, 2 pair of underwear, you know, all of that. And I remember after the meet and greet was done, I stood up and I just felt a whoosh in my underwear, and I had on, I think I may have had the nerve to wear white that day, which I rarely do, but it was something where you could definitely, it was a color where you could see the blood, so I stand up and I just feel, because, you know, a lot of times when I would go to the bathroom, you know, the clots would just fall out. Yeah, and then some of them would be so thick, I would literally have to take my hand and pull it out. Like, I mean, we could keep it real, right? We talk about fibroids, right? So, and I remember I stood up and I looked at my ex-husband, Peter, and I was like, and he was like, I was like, I gotta get to the bathroom. So we go, we're trying to get out of there, the fans are stopping us. And at this point, now the blood is starting to run down my leg. And I'm like, oh my God, nobody's looking down. Everybody's like, oh my God, Cynthia, I can't get a picture. My grandma will talk to you on whatever. Like, I'm bleeding at a public event. So now, Peter's trying to get me to the elevator. I'm walking, it's like a trouble at this point. So I'm in the elevator finally, and it's just blood. Like, he has to call the hotel, they gotta come and clean this. Like, by the time I get to the room, he was like, this is ridiculous. You have got to do something about this. And that was kind of like a breaking point for me. At that point, I was like, I cannot be the only person that's dealing with this. Like, this cannot just be happening to me. And that's when, you know, got in the shower, got myself together, went to bed the next day. I was like, you know, really started diligently looking at other options. And I found UFE, and I was like, if I can get that, that's what I want. And that's what I got, and hands down, one of the best things I've ever done. So we just have to keep talking about it. That's all we can do is just keep talking about it, because people are hearing this. I was just at a fibroids event yesterday, and so many women, you know, we asked them, you know, how did you guys hear about, you know, UFE? And they're like, oh, we saw, you know, Ms. Bill talking about it on this, or we saw her on a live talking about it, we see her posting things about it. So social media has actually been very helpful with getting the word out, because if, you know, we're attached to these phones, and, you know, we're all on social media, so. Slowly but surely, I definitely feel like more women know about it now, and are talking about it now than they did when I had it some years ago. So, okay.
I just wanted to say a couple things. How brave that you were at a time, as you said, no one else was talking about this. It was periods are embarrassing to talk about. People being, you know, ashamed to talk about their periods, and you were brave enough to take that on, and you know, to your credit, I mean, because obviously you're in the limelight, you're modeling, you know, you have persona on TV, you know, beauty and fashion, and here's the antithesis of that, and you took it on, and it's to your credit. I mean, you have helped so many women that you'll never meet, because they got the information and made that choice, and avoided major surgery. So, you know, thank you for doing that. What you described is called pica. It's when you get significantly anemic, you start chewing ice. And when I ask patients in the office, I say, are you tired or weak during your menstrual? Do you get lightheaded or dizzy? Do you get migraine-like headaches? Do you chew or crave ice? All of a sudden they go, how did you know? Like I'm looking right through them, I'm clairvoyant, I'm prescient. They're like, oh, how did you know that? I'm like, well, that 64-ounce cup of ice on the floor. Yeah, they can't go buy any QT or racetrack. It's not that their car has bad gas mileage, they're just going for that big cup of ice. But it's called pica, and in Georgia, where we are, they'll chew the Georgia white clay. It's kaolin, like the main ingredient in kaopectate. That kaolin is crunchy clay. They'll chew that, or they'll chew cornstarch, or chalk, or baby powder, stuff that is normally not edible. It's pica, and it's because they're chronically anemic. They're running deficits, like our government in money, they run deficits in iron and hemoglobin. And so we can correct that, and once they cross that threshold where they're no longer having these horrific periods anymore, they can build up their iron and hemoglobin normally, and it turns off all of a sudden. Just like that, it came on like that, and they don't know where it came from, and when your anemia is corrected, it turns off just like that, like a switch. And they don't chew or crave ice ever again. And you asked about how we're gonna fix, this hysterectomy thing. Well, one of the things that we can do to fix it is to not just be so laissez-faire with our uterus. Not my uterus, I don't have a uterus, but gynecologists often leave women with the impression that once they're done with their kids, they don't need their uterus anymore. And just throw it away. I hear it all the time, every day in the office. My gynecologist said, well, I'm done having my kids, or I'm not interested in kids. I don't need my uterus anymore. That is outrageous. But that's the thing, that's what we gotta get to. So we've gotta get people to respect their own body parts and respect their uterus. It's not a disposable thing, it's not the appendix. It's not disposable. Once we get there, where women are like, no, you're not taking that. That's part of me, And so when we get there, that's the first step in getting rid of, because hysterectomy is the second most common surgery done in the United States. And half the population doesn't have a uterus. And yet it's the second most common surgery we do, and the most common reason is not cancer, which would be appropriate. It's for these benign tumors, fibroids.
So wait a minute, one more. So we're gonna wrap up here. I need you to tell people, if they're not in your area or whatever, can they get the procedure somewhere else, or how do they find it? Because Cynthia did research. Most people wouldn't even think to do that. And then tell us, each one of y'all tell us how y'all gonna help us save these uteruses out here.
Well, so what was the first question?
Well,
yes, you can get UFE anywhere in any large city in the United States.
What type of doctor?
It's an interventional radiologist. That's the kind of doctor that does these procedures. But if you look at our heat map, we see patients at the Atlantafibroidcenter from all over, even other countries. COVID kind of put a damper on a lot of that, but you can get the procedure at any large city in the United States, and even some of the smaller ones. But so it's available. It's widely available.
But you do have a way for them to come in and see you, like some
Yeah,
places.
if they want to come to the Atlantafibroidcenter, absolutely, they can come and see us. And it's easy to, with all the social media, that's easy to find me, whether it's at our website, which is atlii.com, or we have a YouTube channel with over 150 videos on fibroids and UFE. That's Atlanta Fibroid Center. Some people like Instagram. Of course, we have Instagram, dr_my last name, dr_LIPMAN. We have a Facebook page, Twitter. So it's easy to find me if they want to come and see me. But there are a lot of excellent interventional radiologists all over the country that it can be convenient for them.
And how are you gonna continue to help us elevate?
It's my life's work. I mean, I've been doing UFE for over 25 years now. A little bit over 25 years, some in that range. So this is my life's work, and so I am very passionate about it. I don't want to talk at any event where I'm meeting women, particularly young women, who didn't want surgery and had it. As I say, I spoke at Tuskegee University and we're gonna talk about the Tuskegee experiment, the Tuskegee study tomorrow. If you come at 9 o'clock, you'll see graphs about the hysterectomy rates in this country. You'll hear about Tuskegee and its connection to fibroids. So 9 a.m. tomorrow, that's a cheap plug for our talk tomorrow. But I don't want to, when I spoke at Tuskegee, 3 women came up to me afterwards who were less than age 30. They were literally in tears. They were crying after my talk because they didn't want hysterectomy, and they were suffering like Cynthia with these crime scene-like periods and month after month being tired and weak and anemic and fatigued, and they gave up. And the reason they gave up is because every single gynecologist that they talked to, and some had talked to 3 or 4, every one of them said you had to have a hysterectomy. And again, no matter what your gynecologist tells you, you don't have to have a hysterectomy. And that's the most important point, that, be your own advocate. Look for, Cynthia knew there had to be another option. There had to be something better. And there was. But unfortunately, until we can get to where people are respecting their uterus and getting, beyond the gynecologist's desire to operate on everybody, that's when we can make a change. When everybody knows about it, it's not, something they have to look up on a Google or, a search. That's when we'll make real change.
To do my part with this epidemic, because it pretty much is an epidemic, is to continue to talk about it, to keep the conversation going. We have you guys here tonight, but hopefully tomorrow a little bit more, and we can just keep the conversation going. And I feel like, although I showed it on the show, although we talked about it on the doctors, there's still hundreds and hundreds, millions of women that still don't realize that there are other options to deal with fibroids other than getting a hysterectomy. It sounds crazy, but like you said, you just somebody said they had a hysterectomy. Same for me. So we just have to keep just beating over the head. UFE, fibroids. This is what you need to do. See if you are a candidate for this procedure. Because I can't, like I said, I didn't even want to have any more kids, but I still would want my uterus. I don't have to get rid of it. Who wants to go through a major surgery like that when they can just get UFE, which is, non-invasive. So that is what I plan on doing. And in terms of if anyone's not following me on Instagram, I'm always talking about different things whenever I have information. USA Fibroid Centers, they have centers all over the country. So there's definitely places you guys can go to, see what your options are. But just do your research, definitely, follow, everyone who is having this conversation. And then you guys, I challenge you to just keep the conversation going amongst the people that you guys know. It should be normal to talk about fibroids. Everyone should know what it is, and I think it's important for our men in our lives to know as well, so they can know what you're dealing with. Your husband just may think you're crazy, and you're not crazy. You just have fibroids, and you don't feel like doing a lot of different things. And I was going to say something too. FYI, I'm no longer anemic now. And I was anemic my whole life because I always had crazy periods. And I think maybe like 3 or 4 years ago when I went to the doctor to get my checkup, I was waiting for her to tell me, you're anemic or whatever. And I was like, wait, you're not gonna tell me I gotta, take more iron? I'm anemic. She's like, you're not anemic. I'm like, wait, I'm not anemic? When did that happen? It happened after getting UFE. I eventually became non-anemic, and I did notice that I actually stopped chewing on ice and wanting all the crazy things that my body would crave. And I just felt better, more energy, all of those things. So let's just keep the conversation going. I'm going to certainly do my part to keep talking about it. So you guys keep talking about it as well.